Hi, my name is Tim Kutz with Fairfax County Department of Transportation, joined by Nanditha Pratkar, and we're going to talk about the second portion of the Gallows Road multimodal study, looking at the transportation analysis. So the first part of this video will discuss the pedestrian assessment. What we did here is look at a metric called pedestrian level of comfort, and essentially what this metric discusses is how comfortable a sidewalk or trail or pedestrian facility adjacent to the roadway would feel to the average person, given a number of factors. One would be the width of the sidewalk or pathway, how close it is to the adjacent street. So if there's a buffer in between the pathway and the street, how wide is that? And then the posted speed limit on the street itself. These kind of get rolled together to produce a comfort score. And you can see a scale on the bottom goes from 1 being most comfortable to 4 being uncomfortable. So 1 with the green and 4 with the red. And existing conditions are fairly poor when it comes to pedestrian comfort. So we have narrow pathways that are often right up against the street with little to no buffer against the street. But with the cross sections that we proposed, and you can view in the first video, this improves comfort significantly, again, by widening those facilities for pedestrians, widening the buffer between those facilities and the roadway. Really makes, from top to bottom, a much more comfortable and inviting place for people to walk. And this is continued in the middle segment. As you can see, again, there are pockets today where it is fairly comfortable to walk, for example, by the metro station, right by the top of the image on the left, and then even by the Inova campus, sort of approaching I-495. But again, making incredible improvements to that through widening the sidewalks, widening those buffers, again, throughout the middle segment. And then as we get into the southern segment, as we mentioned in the first part of the presentation, it's much more constrained in terms of the available right-of-way. And so we're at least able to make pretty significant improvements on the south side through certain strategies such as narrowing the lane widths, and even from Woodburn Elementary School down to Hummer Road, going to a 3-lane cross section. And so we're able to get that much more comfortable facility, at least on the south side of Gallows Road and Annandale Road for this segment. The bicycle assessment is similar. We looked at a metric called bicycle level of traffic stress, similar in a sense to pedestrian level of comfort in that you're looking at different factors of the roadway. For example, whether or not you are sharing the roadway with mixed traffic on a bike, or whether you have a dedicated off-street facility, that makes a big difference. Again, the posted speed limit is a factor in that. And so today, there is an asphalt trail, though a narrow one, on portions of Gallows Road in the northern segment. And so it is much less stressful if you are using that facility. Otherwise, if you're using the on-street bike lanes in this portion of Gallows Road, very stressful in that there's not a buffer between you and traffic. And so we would improve upon that, again, through offering those off-street facilities, so the 2-way cycle track on the west side, and then widening out the pathway on the east side. And then in the the middle segment, again, similar to the northern segment in that we've continued the 2-way cycle track on the west side and provided a wider pathway on the east side. And then, as I mentioned, in the southern segment, because of the constraints there, in the southern segment, we're able to at least continue the wider pathway on the south side, while not able to provide the improvements on the north side. So we can go to the next slide, and you can see that continues from Gallows Road to Annandale Road, and then as it splits, even having that wider facility on the south side of Gallows Road approaching Columbia Pike, similar to Annandale Road approaching Little River Turnpike. And the next few slides, we'll talk about sort of the safety aspect of this. So the first thing we'll talk about is the parallel routes and providing a safer environment for folks that may not be using Gallows Road itself, but are either connecting to Gallows Road or points along Gallows Road via neighborhood streets or local streets. And so that's been a key concern, not only through what we're recommending, but even today, as a lot of people use some of these local streets to cut through and get to different points along Gallows Road. And so one thing that we've seen in different parts of the country, and you can see examples of on the right, are traffic calming measures called slow streets or neighborhood streets, signage essentially indicating that the street is for local traffic only. It's not to be used for cut through. Signage kind of placed in the roadway to dissuade people from speeding. Generally speaking, these are meant to be streets that are 15 miles per hour or lower and can be shared by people biking, walking, and then, of course, the folks that are driving and live on the streets. And so those are strategies we employ in the parallel facilities. And then looking at the safety assessment, this is the approach we took to look at how we could proactively improve safety by reducing crashes. So the first step was to identify hotspot and at-risk locations. And we did that by looking at a 5-year crash history. VDOT has data on that along the entire corridor. The hotspot locations were those in which we saw severe crashes or fatal crashes or a high number of crashes. And generally speaking, these locations are at intersections. The at-risk locations are those that may not have seen the high number or severity crashes, but have similar characteristics to those hotspot locations where we could expect in the future, if nothing is done, that they could pose a potential problem. And so we forecast future baseline crashes, again, looking out to 2045, by applying a crash growth rate, assuming that if no improvements are made to the roadway as it exists today and traffic continues to rise, that crashes would continue to rise as well. And so to counter that, we looked at proven VDOT safety measures. And sorry if we can go back one slide, such as installing high visibility crosswalks, different things at intersections to make them safer, such as red light cameras. And each of those approved safety improvements has a percentage that affects safety at the intersection. So we looked at those percentages and then saw the reduction in the future baseline crashes by applying those improvements along the corridor. And so the next slide looks at the effects of those. So by making those improvements, we would expect on an annual basis that the average crashes of all types, so looking from left to right, injury, fatal and severe crashes, pedestrian and bicycle crashes would all decrease. And we feel that this is actually a conservative estimate because not all of the improvements that we are recommending are reflected in the VDOT measures. For example, putting in street trees, putting narrower lane widths, generally will slow drivers down. And so that would obviously have a much better effect on safety along the corridor. And so now I'm going to hand it off to Nanditha to talk through the other metrics.
Thanks, Tim. I'll be going over the transit treatments with an overview for the entire corridor. Based on the feedback we received from the community, we looked at some of the ways to improve transit and trying to work with an existing right-of-way for the northern segment instead of taking a lane away for transit. We looked at queue jumps at certain key locations with high through delays and with long right turn pockets. The intersections with queue jumps are shown here in this leftmost graphic at Old Courthouse Road, Gallows Branch Road, and Mary Oaks Lane. Typical intersection queuing with the queue jumps are shown here. Graphic here. The transit-only signal is used to give buses a brief head start ahead of traffic using the rightmost lane to allow transit vehicles to merge smoothly back into the regular through lanes. In the middle segment, we are proposing BAT lanes for a portion of the segment between I-66 and Route 50 in both directions. By BAT lanes, we mean business access and transit lane, where buses and only right-turning vehicles will have access to this lane. And typical intersection configuration of a BAT lane is shown here at the bottom. Buses will have their own receiving lane and can operate with the through phase while not having to wait long at the signals. Route 50 and south of Route 50 with high demand, taking away a lane would cause heavy congestion, and hence we are not proposing the BAT lane in this portion of this segment. In the southern segment, with the right-of-way constraints, buses would operate with general traffic, and the stops that you see here on the map are for connector 401, 402, and 803. But throughout the corridor, we are looking at improving the bus stop amenities in general. This is to show analysis results with the transit treatments using travel times and comparing the preferred alternative to future baseline conditions. For the northern segment, average northbound travel time during AM and peak period would be about the same, but the southbound travel time would increase by a little over a minute. The increased travel time is related to the removal of right turn pockets needed to accommodate the proposed cycle track and to improve pedestrian safety despite the queue jump lane at Mary Oaks. The northbound travel time is improved because the three queue jump lanes overcome the effect of the intersection geometry changes. In the middle segment, the transit travel time would show improvements with the BAT lanes that allow buses to avoid vehicle queues in the through lanes. Except for northbound AM, it would increase by more than 2 minutes with high turning volumes at Dunlorien Metro Station, and also due to the signal timing changes to accommodate the pedestrian and bicycle improvements with protected left turns. For the southern segment, there is significant improvement in travel times, especially for northbound AM and southbound PM, with more than 5 minutes compared to baseline. Southbound AM shows almost 1.5 minute improvement, and northbound PM is just about the same. The travel time changes are due to the reduced vehicle demand along the segment with the proposed lane reductions and improvements at I-495 northbound on-ramp. Moving on to the vehicle assessment, the next few slides here show the delays experienced by vehicles at intersections for the preferred alternative as compared to the baseline. The color coding indicates the wait times at intersections in different categories, with green showing delays 0 to 20 seconds and red showing delays 80 seconds and more. And the top bar showed the PM delays and the bottom bar show the AM. The transparency or fading in the right graphic here indicates no change in delays compared to future baseline conditions, and the colored arrows indicate either improvement or worsening of delays. The arrow pointing upwards is indicative of delays going up, and downward arrow indicates improved delays. For the northern segment, the delays are similar between the preferred alternative and the baseline for most intersections. During the PM peak, the preferred alternative at Boone Boulevard shows a slightly reduced delay, and during the AM peak, the preferred alternative would show lower delays at Mary Oaks and a slight increase at Cottage Street. The minor change in performance is due to the signal timing adjustments. For the middle segment, the delays remain the same for most intersections compared to the baseline, except for some improved delays during AM peak at 2 intersections and some increased delay at 1 intersection. At the I-495 northbound ramps, average delay would be reduced significantly due to the proposed widening of the northbound entrance ramp. And during the PM peak, the delay would be higher than baseline at 3 intersections and lower at 1. And the increased delay is due to the BAT lanes that reduce capacity for general vehicles. For the southern segment, the preferred alternative would provide improved delays during both peak hours with the proposed signal at Aston Street, and also delay would improve at Markham Street intersection during both the peak hours. And the AM peak would improve slightly at Columbia Pike, and PM peak at Annenwood Court. At other intersections, delays would be similar to baseline. This is to show the vehicle travel times for both directions and peak periods comparing preferred to baseline. For the northern segment, the travel times are similar to baseline, with a slight increase for southbound AM due to the removal or shortening of right turn pockets to accommodate the improved pedestrian and bicycle facilities. In the middle segment, the preferred alternative would have a similar northbound AM and southbound PM travel time, and the southbound AM travel time would be reduced by almost a minute, and northbound PM travel time would increase about a minute. For the southern segment, the preferred alternative would reduce the AM peak northbound travel time and PM peak southbound travel time by around 4 minutes, and southbound AM peak travel time by more than a minute. And most of the improved travel time in the AM is a result of widening the I-495 on-ramp in the northbound direction to accommodate more turning traffic and also reduce demand with the proposed lane reduction. And during the PM peak, the northbound travel time would increase slightly, which occurs in segments with the lane reduction. Summarizing the pros and cons of the preferred alternative compared to baseline, it provides a comfortable bicycle facility for nearly the entire corridor for all users and improves pedestrian facilities along with landscape buffers. It provides transit improvements with back lane and queue jumps at strategic locations through the corridor and maintains existing number of lanes for most sections of the corridor. But some of the disadvantages include fewer safety countermeasures compared to the transit and active transportation focused alternatives, and the back lanes may cause some increased vehicle congestion. As part of this study, we are also evaluating possible locations for a bicycle and pedestrian bridge across the Beltway to connect both sides of Merrifield area. Initially, we proposed 6 locations for community to weigh in on, and based on the feedback we received, we are proposing these 3 locations, considering access to Innova facilities and Mosaic District and connectivity with existing trails and sidewalks. Option A is just south of Route 50. Option B is just north of Route 50. And option C is just north of Route 29. In conclusion, we are proposing a few short and intermediate term improvements, considering the full implementation being many years out. Based on key concerns that the community expressed and as funding would allow, we could move these forward. With the safety concern near WNOD trail crossing, we could look into providing refuge island or some crossing improvements here. And access at Stanwood Elementary School is of concern. And operational and safety improvements, in addition to adding sidewalks, could be some short-term options. And we are looking at intersections where there's an opportunity to reduce crossing distance for pedestrians. And one location we are proposing is at Avenue Place. We could evaluate the right turns and also tighten the turn radius to slow down the cars. And at I-495, our proposed additional lane at northbound on-ramp could be an intermediate solution to help with congestion at this interchange, along with some bicycle and pedestrian crossing improvements. And we are recommending adding traffic lights at Aston Street and Hemlock Drive intersections. Lane reduction between Hemlock Drive and Trammell Road from 4 to 3 lanes could be another intermediate improvement to provide comfortable biking and pedestrian facilities. If the lane reduction doesn't offer the desired benefit, we could switch it back to 4 lanes after testing it for a period of time, restriping it back to 4 lanes. We would like your feedback on these recommendations, or if you have any other suggestions. This is to show the next steps in schedule. The portion within the dashed line, the yellow line here is where we are currently with the study. And our survey just went live, and you could take the survey or use the comment form on our webpage to provide feedback. And the survey will be open through end of September. We also plan to host a virtual meeting sometime in September when the schools are in session to provide opportunities for people who could not attend the in-person meetings. And after receiving feedback, we will finalize the recommendations and prepare the final report. The recommendations would result in comprehensive plan changes, and we hope to wrap up the study by the end of this year. And the improvements would be prioritized based on the availability of funding. We conclude here and look forward to your feedback. Thank you all.